All right, for more on this medical, social, and moral dimensions of this, the rising tide of paternity testing in Nigeria, we're joined now by Dr. Ekpe Phillips, Chief County Obstetrician and Gynecologist, or OB-GYN, and Advanced Fertility Expert. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
On News. You know, while we were listening to that report, and we had about 6 people in our studio here.
Yeah.
I made a point. I said, oh, so what it means is that one of us may not necessarily belong to our father. And Doctor, you said, no, not really,
yeah.
not necessarily. Well, thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight. So this paternity fraud, it is on the rise in Nigeria. Why are we seeing this, increasing numbers? And incidentally, this 25% is actually a reduction. It used to be 27% before this last report. Speak to us about what all of these really means and what it portends.
All right, thank you very much for having me here. Yes, DNA is used to strengthen or identify the paternity and even also the maternity, or whatever, anyhow you look at it, biological maternity or biological paternity of a child. Now, with regards to this, I would like to draw Nigerians' attention that they should not take that news so seriously. Why? Because it is not the general population. It is those who have suspicion. You need, for us to have an adequate statistics, you need to go to every child born in Nigeria without any suspicion and take a DNA test to match with their father. Then before you now say, oh, 1 in every 4. See, what they didn't do is that 1 in every 4 of the people that had suspicion and came, there are millions without suspicion. So if you take probably a million couple and go and screen, you'll be surprised that maybe 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000. But once you say 1 in every 4 that comes, it looks like every 4 Nigerian men, you understand, that every 4 kids, 1 is a fraud. No, it's not. It's
that
not
would
true.
mean about 50 million of
Yes.
200 and something.
You understand
million?
that it's not.
That's huge.
So it's not true.
Okay.
That statistics is not complete until they say that for those who present. And why do people present? They present because they had issues. Maybe you saw maybe a text message on a wife's phone, or maybe you had one story or the other, or the child didn't really look like you.
Or
That
the
is
immigration
issues,
issues,
immigration issues.
Okay.
That is what led to that. So it is a very minute subset of Nigerian that statistics applies to. It does not apply to the general Nigeria.
Okay.
So we need to understand that.
Thank you for that, for reiterating that, because again, this report is by one lab.
Yes, thank you very
It
much.
is by one lab.
Yes.
But then again, doctor,
Yes.
if you look at the lab report itself, it did mention that these numbers are consistent. It's consistently on the rise, although there was a drop from the last one, but it's been consistently on the rise. So would you say that indeed there's a deeper trust crisis when you take that as a sample of one lab that we are looking at now? And would you accept that there's a rising demand for paternity tests in Nigeria?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that. The reason being that it is just more of issue of awareness. And so people are getting more educated, seeking solutions and the rest of them. And of course, because in the last probably 15 years, there was no, or 10 years, or even 5 years ago, there may not have been places in Nigeria where you do a DNA test. But right now, it is available. And so people are beginning to look at the options, And if you have any issues or any doubt, sometimes you want to probably go to find out, is this really my child? But remember, it is not a foolproof thing. There are conditions called chimera that can actually, the man is actually the father, but the DNA is saying you are not the father. Why? Because the child who you are testing probably took up a genetic material from a twin that was with the child, but probably died, and now manifests as if that twin was the father of that child. So you see, it's deeper.
How common is that?
Well, you see, it was seen as not common, but with also this DNA proliferation, it's beginning to be seen that perhaps incidence of this chimera is commoner than we thought. And so you can see also some innocent child suffering a psychological displacement of father. Meanwhile, that man is a real father. And also see an innocent man suffering a psychological displacement of the father. Meanwhile, he's the real father. So we shouldn't take it so much sacrosanct. Yes, it helps. There are other ways, maybe you have to add other factors to look at it, but don't just entirely condemn a woman suddenly because, the paternity test was different. It can be this particular case. Even if it's 1 in 100, no innocent person should suffer such allegation when she's actually innocent. So we have to be careful. And like I already told you, the statistics as is being quoted, that is a key point in this interview.
It's not a reflection,
of the generality of Nigerians.
Okay, let's assume that this report actually is. Because, I mean, there's actually no scientific,
other way, yes, of checking.
Of checking. Yes. Now, in the event that you check and
just that only the mother knows the child.
like we say in this part.
Yes.
If you go to do that test as a man and it comes back negative, that you are not the biological father, what do you do in that situation? Do you go for another test and another test to ascertain,
Well, quite a lot of times.
What do you have?
Quite a lot of times you may go do another test and probably to break a tie or to say, it's called a second opinion.
Right.
Let's look at second opinion. Could be as a result of probably error in the lab, though hardly because it's an amplification of the DNA. It's hardly an error, but it could be that. And there are other many circumstances. For instance, my colleague Dr. Rice said it just now that supposing there was small lab error, also supposing that maybe it was a sperm donor issue, supposing there are a lot of supposings, you understand? Even these days, people come to take up, how will I put it, sperm donation, when the man does not have. But of course, those cases, the man knows about it, so it's never really an issue.
Yes.
Then, of course, when they go, for instance, let's assume a lady comes from the United States, request for sperm donation, gets pregnant, deliver the child, and maybe, there's another man or a boyfriend or somewhere there before she came, and they are trying to test. It's going to tell you, but the lady already knows. But again, one thing for sure is that majority of the times, the mother knows the father of the child.
Majority. I mean, here we say only the mother knows the father of a child.
I'm tempted to speak Igbo. But very quick, are you concerned?
Ask him.
Yes, please.
From what you see as the doctor, I mean, in your specialty, is there any traction, complaints, concerns about paternity? Are you seeing any of that? Let's go by your experience. And then this report, this lab says 64% of firstborns, first male child, are most likely to come back negative. Why might that be so?
Well, first of all, the first question you asked me, I declined because my patients are in Nigeria. I could just make a statement that could be a problem. You understand? So I may not be able to
patient
answer
confidentiality. Okay, great.
Why the second one is, you said if you look at it, it's also possible that, I'll give an example. A lady had a young boyfriend in the village where they had their thing. She didn't know she was pregnant. She was young. I mean, she was now married out to this other rich man who lives in Lagos. She didn't know, she didn't have an idea that she was pregnant. The marriage probably took place 3-4 weeks after, and she moved to Lagos. And then she didn't see her period. And the man thought he's the one.
Right.
Before he knew it, probably she delivered at 37 weeks. Meanwhile, that pregnancy could have been like 41 weeks.
So there was no intention
there was no
exactly. But there are no specific laws in Nigeria, unlike in South Africa, for example, to address paternity fraud in the case where it actually is a fraud. How do you deal with that and the psychological, impact of all of this? When you have heard that the man you've always known as your father is really not your father, and the man hears that the child that he has always known to be his child is not his, how do you deal with the
it is really not
aftermath?
an easy task, and it's not one of the things I wish to face in my practice, or any doctor will want to face in the practice, because of the psychological impact on the father, on the child, even on the lady. Sometimes the lady may not know, really, like I just give an example, but it has to do with a lot of counseling. And from what we have seen, you see, it appears sometimes that bonding is even more important than the DNA.
Right.
So most cases, you see the child and the man deciding, I've known him all my life, he's still my son, I'm not letting go. And the child says, this is who I know. I'm not going to inherit any father because of DNA from anywhere. And so sometimes it solves the problem. It's just that it leaves a burden of stigma on the woman. You understand? So that is the issue, but it's more about counseling, psychological counseling, and all and all and all. It's really not easy until you find yourself in those situations.
Absolutely. And we don't pray. Well, let's just leave it there. Dr. Ekwe Phillips is a Chief County Obstetrician.
Chief Consultant
Obstetrician and Gynecologist and Advanced Fertility Expert. Thank you so much for joining us on this. Well, in the studio, while we're discussing this, before we go on, one of our producers said, what if you were told that Dangote or Elon Musk was actually your father?